We had a bid opening at 10 o'clock this morning and no bids to open, so we cannot ask for any sort of budget amendment when we don't know yet what that budget's going to look like in the end. So we're regathering our thoughts on how to go about getting that project wrapped up. But I would ask that 4A3 be removed. Furthermore, you have in front of you at your tables, Chief Polidori, you had a memo in your packet relative to item B on the consent agenda, which is the resolution awarding Lieutenant Jack Austin his service weapon and badge upon retirement. That retirement to take place August 1st of this year. Within that memo, he references NCGS 20-187.2, which was also referenced in the resolution that's in your packet. He did discover over the weekend that that has been recodified within the general statutes, so it is now section 17F-20, and your town clerk has amended the resolution that you'll be asked to adopt to also demonstrate that. But otherwise, everything with that remains the same. And with that, we'll certainly have commentary as we move through the other updates and discussion, but I will turn it back over to you, Mayor, for acceptance of the agenda, hopefully with the removal of 4A subsection 3.
Would you like us to just approve the agenda or approve the consent agenda? Both?
Both, I would say, since we're removing an
That's fine.
item.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And then regarding the resolution to award Lieutenant Jack Austin his service weapon, do we need to include that it has been amended in our approval of the consent agenda?
No, I've gone ahead and done that on the record with my statements. And again, the resolution that you will sign, should it pass, will have the proper section in it.
Okay, thank you. Then I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to council updates and discussion. Airport Road Greenway Joint Project with Pinehurst.
All right. I think I will take this one. Essentially what we have before you, and BJ, if you want to go to the map that is in the agenda there. I think it's on page 9 or 10. Working with the Technical Coordinating Committee with the MPO, it was brought to our attention that the MPO has actually been awarded some federal funding for the past couple of years for carbon reduction project activities. So you can well imagine what many of those look like. One of the things that is eligible under it, however, are greenway trails. There is about $217,000, quote, in the bank of the MPO to be allocated to these projects, with the potential of another estimated $110,000 in October of this year. I say potential because obviously all federal funding is a little bit up in the air right now. It is anticipated the 110 will come through, but there are no guarantees. So for the time being, we're working with the 217. The MPO has gone through a process of soliciting potential projects to utilize this money toward, and there are matching formulas and such within the projects. And the Village of Pinehurst put in for a joint project extending the Greenway Trail that is currently the Southern Pines Greenway ending there in front of Forest Creek, and bringing it down in front of what is known as the Meyer Tract or the McMurray Tract, depending on how recent to the conversation you may be, and then carrying it on into Pinehurst, creating a connection between the Pinehurst and Southern Pines Greenway trails. This is a project that's been looked at a couple of times through the Tri-City conversations, working with Central Pines. And there was an estimate done for the project that brought it in at about $400,000. That project came in from the Village of Pinehurst, and it was based upon some recent construction they did elsewhere in the village of a similar cross-section of path. I had noted in your packet that I had some questions into the NCDOT regarding what might be required in order to install this trail. Essentially, what I received back late on Friday was that it will have to go through some of the similar engineering design and environmental sign-offs that the recent Knoll Road conversation went through. My colleague in Pinehurst, Doug, is working on getting some engineering estimates and the like. And by that, I mean not of the project itself, but actual engineering consultants who can stamp it and do everything else DOT is going to require. And there was some money built into that $400,000 estimate for that, but we're just trying to get a better feel for whether that budget should cover the entire project or not. The reason I have this before you now is there were 3 projects that were put in but for the MPO, this one being a joint one of Pinehurst and Southern Pines, one from Aberdeen relative to some sidewalk, and then a pedestrian bridge project in Whispering Pines. Currently, the approach is that we're going to try by we, I mean the TCC, and we will make a recommendation to the governing board, which we had a brief conversation about at the MPO meeting last week of the governing body. We will make a recommendation to try and distribute the money in such a way that all 3 projects basically receive some seed money, and all 3, actually 4 in this instance, governments will be able to hopefully move forward, providing some additional facilities. What that will mean is at $217,000, as we currently have the money split up, about $100,000 would be attributed to this project, leaving a $300,000 balance on the $400,000 project. And we will have to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Pinehurst around the details of the additional funding and then ultimately maintenance and upkeep. As you look at the map that is on the screen now, the trail will run on the side of Airport Road where everything that currently is sort of in gray or black or charcoal, that is, for the most part, Town of Southern Pines ETJ. So that trail will eventually be incorporated into the town with presumably the development of the Meyer Farm / lands associated with the McMurray tract. However, everything sort of on the left of the screen in the green, that is already in Pinehurst. So at most at this point, we would not be asked to fund anything more than 50% of the remaining amount, and we may be able to work out something additional on that as Pinehurst has a serious interest in this path. And of course, it is Pinehurst that's on the south side of Airport Road there in the green. So depending on how you want to measure it, and if you're not only looking at the side of the road the trail is going to sit on, it's about a 50-50 split from a linear footage perspective. So what I'm asking is whether council is okay with moving forward, recognizing there's still details to be worked out, recognizing that the MPO governing board still needs to approve the recommendation of the TCC, and that ultimately the DOT must approve the applications, and they have preliminarily viewed all 3 projects and said all 3 will be eligible for these funds. But that the town council would be comfortable with my coming back at a future date, one, with an intergovernmental agreement with Pinehurst relative to the construction and ongoing maintenance of this, and then 2, for potential budget amendment covering approximately $150,000 in order to see that this installation goes in. We have asked that not only I am before you, Pinehurst has already sort of okayed this in speaking with Doug at a meeting. And then we've also, and Paul has already got the go-ahead for Aberdeen. We are awaiting Whispering Pines' word on whether they are willing to move forward with their project with a greater amount of input than, at best, this is an 80-20 grant where a project could get 80% federal funds and 20% match. What we're really looking at is about a 25-75 if all 3 of these move forward in their current state. In the event Whispering Pines were not to decide to move forward, theirs is about a $300,000 project. Then the funds that are currently slated for recommendation for them, about $80,000, would be split between this project and the Aberdeen project. And in the event the $110,000 plus minus comes through in October, those funds would be split in a similar fashion along the 3 projects.
So that means that we would get another 50.
That is correct.
So we would reduce it from 300, roughly 50, because,
I don't have that exact figure in front of me.
well,
but
it was
it's-
217 we were going to get 100 of.
We'd have to split the.
Yes.
So 110 we would.
Yeah, the way, so ours is a $400,000 project. Theirs is Whispering Pines is a $300,000 project. The Aberdeen projects is a $160,000 project. As I remember the formula kind of coming out as we get 4 parts, Whispering Pines gets 3 parts, Aberdeen gets 1 part. But depending on whether there's additional money because of the 110 or because one of those projects dropped out, that's sort of how all of the math comes
just
out.
kicking
So
around
it's
round numbers,
Just
roughly
kicking around
50.
round numbers, yeah. At this point, short of the project coming in way above $400,000, 150 is a worst-case scenario, essentially.
Right. And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, but that relies on the potential 110 coming through as far as 150.
No, it does not. That is as things stand now.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
if the 110 comes through and we pick up another 50, give or
50.
take, then it could be 25 less, so it'd be
So where'd you get your
125.
150? Sorry. Where'd you get your 150 now?
So $400,000 project.
Right?
Money in the bank right now being recommended for $100,000 toward this project,
Correct.
leaving a $300,000 balance.
Correct.
Split between Pinehurst and
Okay,
Southern Pines,
okay. I went
150
with you.
each.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I was at the last meeting, and I heard y'all talk about the funding formula that you were coming up with, and also this conversation with the town councils about the desire to proceed forward. Was there ever discussion about a schedule for each, like if we're awarded,
Yep.
when do we plan on doing it?
So I believe the interest would in fact be moving forward in the coming year because the project, if it's 400 this year, probably becomes 450 the next and 500 the following. There is one caveat in that technically upon accepting the grant or accepting the funds, you have up until 3 years to spend it. So I do not believe Pinehurst, nor would I recommend accepting this and waiting 3 years out. That may or may not be something Whispering Pines is looking at based upon the match that may be required to make their project move forward. I can't speak for them, but I know that 3-year period came up during conversation at the TCC.
So that's the rule for spending it, but it's not the rule for granting it.
That is correct.
So is it wise for every community to say what their plan is to implement what they're asking funding for? Like, I think that we would probably fast track it along with Pinehurst.
And I know that's Aberdeen's plan
I think
because it's
Aberdeen would too.
ongoing sidewalk, yeah.
But I don't know, I didn't get the feel for Whispering Pines to,
And they have
is it
not.
worthwhile to know that information, I guess, for this exercise by the TCC?
I think that will absolutely be a worthwhile question at the TCC level. And if there isn't an answer, coming out of the TCC, I think it's a governing body legitimate
Right.
question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Is the trail to be consistent with the trail that already exists along Airport Road?
Yes, they sent the cross-section that they used for their previous project that I said this estimate was based upon. I sent that through James Mickle, and he confirmed that it is every bit similar to our own recent installations.
And is upkeep and maintenance jurisdictionally determined? In other words, the parts that are in Southern Pines, how would that be part of an agreement?
That would be an easy way to do it. It can always be traded off and
That's
done
part
other
of a-
ways, but yeah.
A conversation for the future?
Yes.
Okay.
Given that upon initial installation, a portion of this is simply going to be in ETJ,
Right.
I would want to go ahead and include that in any agreement, just to be clear about it.
Great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I kept writing down questions and you kept answering them before I asked them. Way to go.
Well, that's good.
Done. Well done.
So the action from us today is,
Just if the answer is heck no, let me know that, and we'll pull our involvement in the application. But otherwise, just a nod and a yes, we're comfortable with revisiting this as the details come together.
and possibly from a scheduling perspective, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
As soon as funding happens and we get an alignment with Pinehurst, we would move.
And
forward with the
understand
project.
that because it involves the environmental and the engineering design,
Right.
it won't happen as quickly as
I
if
got
we
it.
were to
Right.
run out and do it in one of our parks. But
We wouldn't start doing that in year 3, though.
I would hope not,
Right.
no.
Perfect. I'm good.
So I think the opposite of a heck no would be a shoot yeah. So I say shoot yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay, and if you had not mentioned it earlier, I do want to appreciate or just mention my appreciation for Reagan serving as the chair for the TCC. I don't know, when did you take over that? Beginning of this year?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. Well,
Absolute
I don't
pleasure
think I said it.
given the governing body and its leadership I have to work with, so.
We're making it work. All right, thanks, Reagan. So I think everybody's good to move forward on requesting that money?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, potential request to transfer Pinehurst Avenue and Murray Hill Road to DOT.
Me again. This is one that has been brought up with previous councils from time to time, and it's one that we believed we had kind of worked out at one point until DOT changed some direction. But essentially, you're all familiar with Pinehurst Avenue and Murray Hill Road between the sections that run between 15501 and US 1. If you do any driving down in that area, you're familiar with the extreme amount of traffic that are contained on both of those. They are far more than just local roads. They do carry traffic that, quite honestly, is just cutting through between one state highway and the other, in part because of the congestion and difficulties related to each of those highways, in particular US 1, and the suicide lane, as many refer to it, but the continuous turn lane that runs down US 1 that will be soon under construction as they create the Super Street or Synchronized Street project that's been on the books for some time. There's a process under which the town can request the NCDOT to take over maintenance responsibilities of a town-dedicated street. And MAC is also familiar with that. It will involve a resolution before the town council that we then send off to the NCDOT as sort of a petition to consider our request that they accept. At this point in time, the suggestion is that we request both Murray Hill and Pinehurst Avenue. They may come back and say yes, they may come back and say no, they may come back and say yes to one, no to the other. The last time that we paved Pinehurst Avenue, and that information was contained in a memo in your packet, we went to explicit design in getting that repaving done so that it met the NCDOT standard at the time, in anticipation that they would accept Pinehurst Avenue following our repavement of it. Unfortunately, about the time we finished that was about the time that NCDOT was running out of funding, and they delayed the synchronization project, and everything kind of went on hold. So now as we get ready to move back into construction of those improvements, again, it is my position, and I think common belief, that both Pinehurst Avenue and Murray Hill will become very necessary and important parts of various detour routes and carrying traffic as the orange barrels sit out there for a couple of years. And the expense of paving and upkeep of these roads is far more significant than what we would typically have with a local street. This more than takes up our POW bill funds any one year that we have to do something with one or the other of these.
Is that the only downside, just less Powell money?
Yes, and it doesn't really, we've not been able to specifically calculate the POW bill because it's due to both local factors like population and lane miles, but then also statewide factors as they divvy up those dollars. So it's not going to be a huge, six-figure loss or something in the POW bill should we give these up. But that's really, that's the biggest, I guess, downfall to this sort of thing. When you look at the POW bill map that I included in your packet, there are a couple of short roads that connect these two that still remain on the local system. There is one street, and actually I think it is Short Street, that we likely will be back in future years, regardless of whether the state accepts this or not, and requesting abandonment of. It is nothing more than a driveway and sometimes just a parking lot for the collision center that is back there. It will never go through all the way to Aberdeen, as Aberdeen has abandoned quite a bit, and it represents a lot of drainage there. So that's one that you'll see at some point in the future as we just simply look to get out of that driveway situation. But otherwise, again, I think everybody recognizes these as significant thoroughfares and through streets, and probably a lot of people already think they're on the DOT maintenance program. And this is simply, at this point, a question of council as to whether you wish to pursue said resolution and petition, or not, and we'll move on to the next topic. And
Is there anything else in terms of like control or right-of-ways or anything that our handing it over would
it clearly, if it goes to the state system, becomes part of, the state right-of-way and the state system. So as far as speed limits and things, those all are controlled by the state, and we would have to petition them to change those. But I think the speed limits on those routes are sort of what they are. The town did go to the expense of putting some sidewalk on Murray Hill, and we actually had some terrible incidents over there a number of years back. Pinehurst Avenue may one day need that sort of thing, but the expense of that, if you've driven it, it's not insignificant because of the stormwater and the way that that is handled along Pinehurst Avenue. That's really almost a state-sized project as opposed to something the town would undertake.
So if it's a state road, they would handle the sidewalk installation. Yeah. There's a lot of people that walk on that road.
Yes. Yeah, and the right-of-way there is obviously a challenge to try to get a sidewalk in somewhere because you've got the open ditch through a good portion of it.
Yeah.
Can you give, just publicly give, and we've talked about this before, but just what is normally, or I guess there's not a true normal, but what was the Powell bill income from last year? What was the entire Powell bill income?
I'm going to, was it
Ballpark.
606? I knew it had gone up because I think we budgeted 570 something and it came in at 606 after the state passed their budget, which they put a little bit more money into the pot,
And that's
which meant
606,000.
yes, which
100,000,
600,000, which to give you an idea, our paving program is about 1.2 million a year.
Right. And can you also publicly state what it costs to pave a mile of road? Just again, a ballpark figure.
I don't have that right offhand.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's significantly more than 606,000, right?
Do you know how many miles of road that we pay for 1.2 million approximately?
I can get that for you. I do not know it off the top of my head.
I think it's fiscally just a really intelligent thing to do, and I've actually been asking about this since I was first put on the council. Why doesn't DOT take that over? So my vote is absolutely hallelujah as far as trying to petition to get DOT to take it over. And my point in asking those questions that I did not warn you I was going to ask, for which I apologize, was I think this is just fiscally a brilliant move if we no longer have financial responsibility for those very, very highly used connectors that connect to state roads. So I'm definitely for it, and I do think it's a responsible thing for us to do. Have you gotten any feedback from the representatives from DOT, the local representatives or district representatives from DOT, as to whether or not they would be willing to seriously
I think they are fully aware that we are interested in having this done. Of course, a number of people at the local office from a staffing standpoint have changed since the last time this all
Right.
occurred. And even at that time when they said, yeah, we're not interested in doing this now, it was sort of we've got all these issues going on. It needs to be revisited in the future. I also want to return to Councilman Goodman's question, which also it goes along with yours. The reason I don't have just a number off the top of my head relative to a mile or how many miles we get done for 1.2 million
Right.
is it's going to vary greatly depending upon,
It's on the road.
well, the
Right.
big wild card in all of that is if it's a curbed
Right,
street that
right.
we've got to put milling money into, that will increase the cost
Sure.
per mile very, very quickly. If we
Right,
have to
so I
mill
think-
it versus just go over it and,
Yeah, I think that's a
Bring
tough
it
way to
back.
make a determination, or maybe an unjust way to make a determination. I understand that. There is no way this is fiscally irresponsible, though, was sort of my line of questioning was based on that assertion, and I want to make sure, I'm just asking you to double check what I'm thinking.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it would make sense for DOT to take that right over, and we would benefit from it. And I anticipate we're probably going to have more, not less, golf tournaments with people running from one state road to the other constantly on those connectors.
And I have been reminded, so for the record, I want to fix it in case somebody goes and prints it. It's not Short Street, it's Sandy Lane that I was talking about relative
There's
to the
a
abandonment.
long street in the.
There is a long street and a short
And
street,
Short
but I
Street
should
into
have
the-
said Sandy Lane. So,
Right, and it's into the radio station.
Yes,
Yeah, because you
yes,
go down
but that
Long
is not
Street,
the
you
one
get
I
Short
was
Street.
talking about. It's
And we
Sandy
have,
Lane.
yeah, we have to wonder what the people who named those were thinking, yeah. But anyway.
So do
yes.
you need a motion this evening or just a request to drop the
Just a
resolution?
request that we go ahead and draft this up and start the process.
Hallelujah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do
Go for it. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple concepts for the downtown parking lot.
I'm going to quit speaking and have Assistant Manager Cameron go ahead and handle the presentation on this one. Although I will remind you all that we now have $125,000 built into the draft budget for this project. So if you don't have an immediate answer this afternoon, that's just fine. If you have an answer, then that will allow us to go and refine estimates and get projects moving. I would ask that if you don't have an answer this afternoon, I don't expect you to, we will want to revisit this early on in the fiscal year, July, August, so that, again, this is going to be a difficult one to schedule regardless of what route you go. It also impacts the irrigation project that we also have in the budget because potentially more area will have to be irrigated than what we originally planned with that. So, so with all of those caveats, don't need an immediate answer this afternoon unless there's an obvious one, but be thinking about it in the coming 60 to 90 days.
Assuming that you're going to talk to us about irrigation with any one of these options, okay?
Going to touch on it.
Let's chat.
All right. So as with our normal projects, town staff identifies things that need to be paved, whether streets, parking lots each year. It was the downtown parks came up on the paving list for this year. As you can see, we're talking about the parking lot downtown. You guys should have seen this in your packet. So there's been a lot of involvement from staff on this, a lot of discussion, a lot of meetings, a lot of different ideas. So that included obviously street department, some of the utilities folks. BJ was heavily involved in this, the Parks and Grounds crew, as well as our parks folks and facilities folks. So we've had a lot of discussion about how to go about this because this will be a challenge when you go to pave this because it's just this location by itself. It's going to have to be closed for a while. So initially, what was recommended is what you see here. This is what the current condition of the park is. This used to be the parking lot for the old police department was there, and that's kind of why it has a couple of bulb outs. So initially, what was proposed in the budget was to come in and remove those bulb outs and put in, repave that with some curb going around that. So we'll show you option number one, which you should have saw this in your packet. So this is nothing more than going in and taking those bulb outs out. We'll go from 8 parking spaces up to 12 parking spaces. One of the things we have a challenge right now, as you've seen some of the pictures with the grass growing. On a regular basis, events that are going in the park, probably mainly the farmer's market, they drive over the curb. We want to create a little bit of a curb where you couldn't drive over it, put some plantings there, make it look nice, but there would be an opening in the end where you could drive out into the grass to set up for the farmer's market if that's what we continue to do, and that's what staff assumes will continue to happen. So this was kind of option one. You can see how that looks. They planned this as a contractor doing the work, and this was basically $125,000, give or take. Go to option two there, BJ. So option two is actually do away with the parking spaces, but still have a drive. Obviously, staff still needs to get in there. Farmers market would still have to get in there. But we would do away with the parking spaces, bring the grass up to the new curbing, but it would be a mountable curb where you could drive across it if necessary. Speaking of the irrigation, right now in the current budget and next year's budget, we have $50,000 set aside to upgrade or to replace the irrigation system in the existing park. Obviously, we would want to bring that irrigation, if we do this project, do this option, we would bring that irrigation further up into those parking spaces, which would now be grass. So we would use a combination of the 125 plus the 50,000 for irrigation.
And what's the potential destruction if people, I like the mountable curb idea, I understand it.
Go back to the first slide there, BJ.
So, yeah, what's the potential now for
Go back to current. So.
destruction of irrigation every week as a farmer's market?
So there's already irrigation out there, and
Yeah.
there's always that chance. We do a couple repairs out there each and every year. Staff did not think that we would be able to, that we didn't ask for the farmer's market to be moved. We just originally wanted to pave the parking lot. I think obviously that's an elected official decision, but if we say, hey, we want to do something different with the farmer's market, we haven't spoken to them about that at all. So
Okay.
that is already something that happens now is we don't see a lot of damage to the irrigation system, but is the potential there? Absolutely.
Okay.
And you can see, give me that aerial view for just a minute, BJ. Yeah, so you can see how that grass is right there. That's from pretty consistent driving over that area. And some of that doesn't have irrigation, but it would when we're finished. So that's what it would look like if you don't put some type of,
Is the irrigation buried and then?
It is.
And is it buried enough that you can take an impact from somebody driving over it?
so yes, the pipes are definitely buried. The heads are
You're right,
popped down into the ground.
right.
But
How far down? Do we know?
they're,
A lot of times they'll mount
2
them on a
inches.
flexible hose, so if you drive over, it will actually move.
And it will go, okay. So the other things that happen over onto the grass is late night movies and giant food trucks.
Autumn Fest.
Autumn
we-
Fest.
So we've tried to start keeping food trucks off of the grass. We've been like Autumn Fest, you'll notice we don't put food trucks in there anymore. We try to
Okay.
keep the vehicles off the grass the best we can during those events. But that's.
So if
that's
we were going to
subject
do
change.
a downtown movie, we would want the food truck to park on whatever surface we had,
That would be preferable.
with the only limitation being if we said, hey, let's just make it all grass.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. Thank
You
you.
can see how the grass looks there. It never comes in
It's not a
fully.
pretty sight,
No.
yeah.
We don't get any complaints about it that I know of, but I'm looking at Greg and he knows. Look, so, all right, BJ, go to option number 2. So 2, as I just showed you, that's what that would look like, just basically a driveway. We have to leave the end open so we can get our staff, and our staff goes to there usually once a day to do some work, and they usually have to have a vehicle in there sometimes.
And does the width of that allow for 2 vehicles?
It does.
It does? That's a,
does.
that's a yes, okay.
Option 3. Option 3, we would still be able to drive across the grass, but we would put bollards at the end of the road where only authorized personnel would be able to go in and out. But we could grass it all the way to the fence. That is an option, and just extend the irrigation system to that. So pretty straightforward.
And you say that, I'm sorry.
Okay, what's the price on that?
So right now, we feel like we're able to do all this. I'll talk about 125 plus 50. We're talking about 175. We feel like we can cover most of this under that cost.
Okay, so even without
Now,
the paving, just
we've got
increasing-
one that's probably going to be outside of it, could be outside of that. That's option 4.
But you have a rough number for each option, and 175 was for which option?
So 175 is the total amount that we would actually have. So
Total,
175 was based on the 125 concept 1 and the plus
50.
50 for the irrigation for that part. So if you think about it,
I got you.
as you extend irrigation, you're also decreasing amount of asphalt. So
Right.
there's an exchange there.
175 is the total based on what, but you don't have a number for each option.
No,
roughly.
rather than going out and talking with contractors to specify each one of them, that's why we tried to narrow this.
it was a lot of chasing to get those numbers. You can ask BJ. BJ started chasing numbers, and I'll be honest with you, I told him, BJ, stop. I said, because he was chasing numbers for 4 options, and you're only going to pick one option. So we feel fairly comfortable on 3 of those options at this point.
okay, so can we go back and I want to make sure I heard what you said. And what you said is the town is in that space with a vehicle daily for one reason or
Yes.
another for upkeep. So we need to keep that in mind.
Yes.
And
That's a town vehicle there, right?
right, it's a town vehicle, right, I understand that, but it also means that there's going to be, I mean, grass, which I love grass and trees, I'm a big fan, but that means that the grass is going to have a daily traffic in and out.
But only a
One,
vehicle.
a vehicle,
Okay,
which is,
Okay.
which is a self-created driveway, pretty
yeah.
soon, yeah. Okay,
One time a day, I don't think. But
Okay.
option 3 would be the least expensive, I guess, of all these 4.
This is also the one, though, that if your intent is to keep the farmer's market in the park. I mean, that grass, it's one vehicle from the town, but if you continue to do farmer's market,
You're right.
So
there's and a lot of
Is a lot,
stuff, so.
yeah.
there were, on one of the last farmers markets on Saturday, we had 16 people in the grass and 12 in the parking area.
Right.
So that's a typical Saturday.
So this is just a guess. So if I'm gonna put a dollar sign for each one, option 3 would be $1 sign, and option 1 would be $4 signs? Would that be the most expensive?
I think option 4 is going to be your $4.
Option 4 is the most expensive.
The one.
Yeah, we hadn't gotten to 4.
Of course, it's the one I like,
Right.
right, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and tell us the bad news.
So here's option 4. This is a combination of a lot of different things. It's not pavement. These are permeable pavers that you can put. In this example, BJ used gravel, like pea gravel in there, that you can put in. Some places put grass in it. We've got a couple places in town that are already doing this. This is the most expensive option because of those pavers are quite expensive. That is one where we kind of stopped chasing because it was a lot. We wanted to get a buy off and say, hey, this is the way we want to go, and if you want a price for this. Now, when I say most expensive, we're going to have to contract this out. We have the talent in-house to do it, but we have to pull people off jobs to do this, and I think that hurts us in the long run. So we wouldn't recommend pulling staff off a job to work on this project. So we would contract this out, and we're in the 175 plus range to do this.
That's a lot of subgrade work with this option.
So,
It's permeable, which is nice.
It's the same way.
Width is the thing, so it's 2 vehicles can get in and out. It could get used for the food truck for the movies. You could
Yep.
keep the food truck on there. And you would not destroy the irrigation. And when you say 175 plus, do you have, you want to take a ballpark swing at plus? You want to define plus?
Nope.
You're a smart man.
Good try.
Yeah, it was good.
So option 1 would be $2 signs, and option 1 would be $3 signs, and
You
option
sound like
2
you're shopping for motel rooms. Restaurants.
so what's the difference between, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
that's good.
go ahead, Madam. What's the difference between the paved and that option 4 with the, I mean, what's the benefit in option? Still in
The
what?
permeability.
This is a permeable surface, so it just stormwater controls a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some people actually think that looks better, works better.
I was gonna say,
So here's one thing that we haven't talked about as far as dealing with the stormwater. The existing parking lot already has inlet
Floods.
structures to deal with stormwater.
It does flood. Every time it storms,
Well, it does.
no, the middle of the park.
The middle of the park.
It's a lake.
Oh, but it's just for the parking lot that the inlet structures are on in the parking lot.
Actually fun.
So
Inlet structures that
there are some drains in the parking lot that would ultimately be, depending on what we choose, could ultimately be capped off and not be in place. But that's because you have grass, sand to take on some of that water. The mayor is correct. There is an area in the middle of the park that this has nothing to do with that does flood during a heavy rain.
Correct.
They are going to attempt to correct some of that with this irrigation project, but it's not, I don't know that it's going to be 100% correction.
Nothing to do with this. Did we ever determine, because I know you and I stood out there and couldn't see it, but
is it a
do the drains from this current parking lot go through there?
They do.
Yeah.
So i.e. making it pervious here and taking that out of that center area would only help whatever backup is happening there in the bad
It would
flow.
probably reduce some of that
Yeah.
flooding.
So you have less flooding.
The street where it eventually ends up.
Yeah.
The Baptist church that's catty corner from the park has the beginning of a driveway
Does.
so that they can have people park on the field. But I assume it's because where people drive onto the field maybe gets the most traffic right there.
So
Would it
think-
make sense?
BJ and I actually went and looked at that. And they had used some plastic or some type, it's not the exact same thing, it's some permeable pavers that they put in there, and they put grass in it. And I remember when they did that, don't ask me to tell you the reason they did that, but I assumed that it was because people, when they had overflow crowds, they were having people park there. and
It
they
was
weren't gonna
specifically for overflow parking.
pave- Yeah, they weren't going to pave it,
Yeah.
and that was a simple way of creating additional parking for them.
So the Presbyterian Church did that too, or you're talking about the Baptist Church?
Baptist
Are you
on
talking
the
about the Baptist?
And the Baptist church just has a solid driveway.
Drive thing.
You know what, you're right, you're right.
Apron. It's actually an apron. I
Okay.
mean, it's wide and it's right there at the base of it, yeah.
So if we expect that every Saturday in the warmer months, plus Friday nights, we're gonna, oh, and I guess every day for maintenance, we're gonna have people driving over the edge. Does it make sense for, even if we go with all grass, to have some of it paved just where it's
Well,
like the entrance?
Or
what I'm
permeable
asking?
pavers. I mean, are you
Yeah,
counting
either
permeable
one,
pavers
yeah.
as one part
I'm
of the
just trying to think
paving?
like the most
Yeah.
common spot where people drive up over the curb.
well, I think that's
Essentially a curb cut with an apron or something. And I think the one you're talking about at First Baptist,
It's really wide.
that may
and
have been
deep.
an existing curb cut before they did the addition on the church. Because I remember part of the conversation around the addition was that that yard was going to serve as kind of overflow parking.
does
And I think it may have been an existing curb cut. I can't remember if there was parking back there, or I don't think there was,
No,
but
that was the original Methodist church that got knocked to the ground, which maybe,
Yeah.
well, Bill and I are probably the only ones who remember that. But that was knocked to the ground, then that, I think, was put in as a part of the revision there with the anticipation of overflow parking.
and of course, we have an existing curb cut there to enter this parking lot. So
Right,
I don't
right.
think any of these suggestions
Yeah, we weren't planning.
dictate that you take that out.
So the street cut, we weren't planning on getting away from that. So-
I'll give my 2 cents. I just see one of these as a valve. I just see option one as the option. I'll tell you why. This is back to like 2019. We spent so much time fighting for 1 and 2 and 3 more downtown parking spots. We got inundated. We want downtown parking. This is the only one that preserves any spots. If in 2019 you said, hey, here's 12 spots, heart of downtown, we would have jumped up and down, probably at $100,000 cost. We restriped blocks to get like 2 extra spots. I mean, we fought hard for spots down there because it was a voice to us, and still is. I just see this looks nice. We've got it in the budget, and it's a way to have 12 nice spots downtown. And it would accomplish all the driving. We wouldn't have to worry about, are we messing up the cut, the grass? So to me, it's option one, but that's just my 2 cents.
I 100% agree with that, and for exactly the same reasons. I think getting rid of parking spots is going to be a problem. And I think that the issue about driving on the other options, I think you're going to have the same issue with the wear and tear on the grass, because unless everybody runs off the road at the exact same, I mean, in different spots, you're going to get wear on the grass with option 3 or 4 or 2. On all the other options except for option 1, I prefer maintaining some parking, and it's got $3 signs, so.
So if you're going with option one, how do you guys see, I mean, I can see the movie with the food trucks there. How do you guys see the farmer's market happening?
So the only difference is for the farmer's market standpoint.
Right.
We're not going to use a mountable curb. We're not going to let them cross where these bushes are. There is an opening, there will be a built-in opening at the end for them to drive through there and come back into the grass.
I mean, they could
So you're
block
still going to
the-
be driving on the grass.
Or they
but-
could block that lot off for farmer's market. It's not a public parking lot for that day. It's just, they still put their trucks on there.
Same way with movies for the food trucks, or Fall Fest, my word. I prefer Fall Fest.
For option 2, is there any possibility of having parallel parking up against the fence?
We discussed that. You could probably get, I think it was 7 or 8
Okay,
spaces.
that's not terrible.
Not terrible.
The only thing that I don't like about option 1 is you're putting 12 vehicles right next to a park where you know kids are gonna be running around, out of the cars, into the park. I think it's just dangerous.
Only to state the obvious, we're already doing that with 8 vehicles.
Oh, yeah, no, I 100% agree.
Well, you have a curb too, a real curb, a vertical curb, and trees. Or bushes, was it trees or bushes?
Going up into the kids, not going forward into them. It's like putting the drive-through.
But that fence will stay, right? The fence.
Yeah, nothing's happening on that side with our proposals.
Yeah, and I understand your problem about safety. And I creep through that block when I walk, because there are kids running around the cars. It's really, I mean, I understand it was a traffic slowing decision. It's also, wow, is it scary. There-
Probably safer than the street.
I agree with
street
that. This is
parking.
safer than the street. I think it's also pretty ugly and puts more concrete downtown. I'm a fan of option 4, of course, because it's the most expensive. Just, what are you going to do? But I understand the constraints too, and that you can actually pull onto the grass then, and you've got a situation.
I mean, I like 3 until the grass dies.
I do hate 2. I think we're all on board with disliking 2.
It's funny because I'm actually okay with 2 if you can get some parking spots.
Okay.
Only because it is some parking, but it's not as much concrete as 1.
I like that.
The one wouldn't be adding any more concrete to that footprint other than covering over the bollards, right?
Yeah, it's identical space,
Which the bollards look pretty awful anyway.
all bouts.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, it would pave over this little area right here and this little area right here.
Right.
Right.
Small detail, but
Right.
yes, it would square this off, and this would all now become concrete or asphalt right through here.
Well, losing that landscaping would clearly be a problem. Look at that.
This is already concrete. This is already concrete right there. So it's like
The space would be the same. Would there be more asphalt? A little bit more, but the space itself is.
You had in this picture, like some nice bushes or you would nicen it up.
We would. That was the plan.
That's not even a word.
Nice, and it's
That's not even a word.
But it's all right.
Don't put that
Sounded
down.
great.
Mayor,
Use that twice.
There's a word. Now there's a word.
I feel like we're all over the place, which makes me feel like we're not going to come to a solution tonight.
I missed the
Staff's
days.
discussion.
I heard what you said, Taylor. I miss the days of parents holding children's hands. I held my kids' hands until they were almost bigger than me. I hear what Bill is saying about the parking spaces. It is, I don't know.
We do need the parking.
so your concern is a vehicle going onto the playground or going onto the grass or both?
Neither. My concern is that vehicles pulling in and out of those parking spots are backing up into children
In the parking lot?
in the parking lot.
Who are running to get to their car.
Yeah.
I agree.
To their car, to the park, whatever they're doing, it's a high traffic kid area and we're putting 12 parking spots.
And we have about that many out on the road, which is also scary. I agree with you.
But I mean, I totally get what Bill's saying. Like, we need parking downtown and giving up 12 spots, giving up 8 spots.
We'll
with
get
potential of
50%
12.
more.
Yeah. Do you all want to come to a decision tonight or do you all feel comfortable discussing this later?
I think the permeability is really something to think about as far as water runoff. I think it's really important as far as the park goes. And I mean, even if option 5 becomes even more expensive and you do the permeable surface and you make it as wide
There's no option
as the
for.
original, yeah. So it's 4B.
So I kind of go back on the permeability. So this parking lot isn't adding to the flooding on the park.
But it might be,
It may be if the drains are set that way.
yeah. James, when you need him.
I don't think that it's adding to that because there's a couple of drains. Aren't didn't we look at drains in the park?
They're
on the
not
parking lot?
daylighting into the park.
Yeah,
are
there are some drains in the parking area already. We don't,
You can see it from the top down,
Yeah.
the aerial photo.
we had this discussion and I can't say definitively, but I don't think the parking lot is adding to the issue in the park,
Okay.
the water issue.
there's one right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the aerial photo. The drone photo.
Yeah, I share your concern about the water.
I mean, and
It's just off the screen there, isn't it, Mike? The one in the center?
Yeah, you can't see the one in the center is because we weren't focused on that for this project.
Why don't we, when would you like an answer? July, August, you said?
Yeah, July, August.
Okay. Why don't we keep an eye on farmer's market Saturday morning? Maybe drive by tonight and look at it flooding.
Determine whether the parking lot currently is adding to that flooding.
Yeah,
For
and then
sure.
we'll come up with a decision in a month. Okay. Because, yeah, it sounds like there's pros and cons of every single option.
I mean, there is option 5 that mimics option 1 with permeable asphalt.
Right, that's my vote. And at the very least, if you're gonna do option 1, I don't know enough about this, and you're gonna know a whole lot more than I do, Brandon, but something that is lighter than the very dark asphalt there. I mean, think about the hottest July day, and then this strip of dark black asphalt.
Is that farmer's market?
It's just, yeah, BJ went out, he got there right as the farmer's market was over.
What we were going to ask for.
Yeah. So this is an excellent video.
Yeah. BJ, excellent. You get an A+.
Mike,
Wish that our YouTube
So,
would show what's on the screen.
so the color.
Look at that, running across the
Child,
parking
there's a
lot.
child right there. On cue.
It was as bad as it looked, but we planned that. No, no, just-
It's a rent-a-child. We got to rent a child into the scenario.
Did he come out from underneath that truck?
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to say thank you, Mike and BJ, or whoever else helped put together these options. It's really nice to have a visual of what we're trying to decide.
Just driving all over the grass. Yeah.
When it ends up in the pilot, we'll get some really strong feedback.
So
And it's going to be all over getting us some feedback.
since we worked on that Harbor Place
Where
project,
is the Jeep going? That's what I want to know. What is the purpose?
going to pick their stuff up, they had a booth.
Stop it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
see them, they pulled up so.
Mike, since we're tabling this for right now, any possibility we could get some idea of option 4 that Ann said was most expensive and that's why she liked it, but it is,
And
it is,
actually,
it is cosmetically.
No,
more.
it's sort of my style, Deborah. Thank you for recognizing that. Yeah, when we originally refurbished my home 30 years ago, my husband came home and said, I have found the most expensive faucet for this thing. I've saved you the trouble. So that's been kind of a recurring theme. But I also think this is going to be 30 years. It's going to be 30 years before it gets redone. And so I hate to save a dime at this point. And if permeability corrects some of the issues in the park, and if permeability, even with a curb, and if the farmer's market continues to be here, then let's have some rules about bring your stuff to your car and park your car over here and use this as parking and stop using it as a drag racing scene. No, just kidding. But I think in option 5 that extended out to where it is, it had the permeability and some sort of landscaping that made it clear that that was for, and that can be for parking too. I mean, we can accommodate what Bill wants with the parking, which I don't disagree with. We can close it off during farmer's market and make it only for merchants at farmer's market. It also helps with the water not running off the concrete. It also helps with the heat downtown on the very hottest day in July. And it means that stormwater has a place to go. So,
I think that one of the things I want to say about the permeable pavers and the permeable asphalt is it does require maintenance for it to be an pervious surface. It's not forever that way.
right.
And it's a maintenance issue. And eventually it quits doing what its plan was. Yeah, when you get sand and it gets in there, it reaches a point where it doesn't perform as well.
As do we all.
Speak for yourself. I think that I want to stress the fact that this appears to already have stormwater management. Now, we don't know exactly where daylights, but I don't think that this parking lot, my guess is this parking lot isn't creating the issue on the park that we're talking about. And we just need to prove that.
Sorry that we're not coming to you with an answer.
No apology necessary.
Not only do we
I
not
knew
have an
this was-
answer, you still have 4 options to consider.
You might have 5 or 6.
Staff went through the same process.
Yeah.
All right? And y'all are no different than the staff was.
Okay, so it sounds like the council has all different favorites. Did the staff also have all different favorites, or did you all have a top choice?
The staff has all different favorites,
Okay.
depending on which staff member you talk to.
BJ, what's your favorite?
Oh,
Oh, that's showing some favoritism towards BJ. Why?
It's a one move. It's
Oh, actually, when all is said and done, and I won't bore you with all the many thoughts, et cetera, when all is said and done, my favorite option was option 2.
Cool.
And if I may, for me, in thinking about this space, prioritizing automobiles in this space is an intrusion of automobile orientation and automobile scale into our most treasured flagship public space. And I felt that the need to have cars intruding into, injecting into that space was unneeded. However, the need for maintenance and the need for access for the purpose of the market, which is a treasured use of our treasured space, was critical to preserve. But the actual daily use of automobile traffic to go from 8 to 12, I thought 8 or 12, we just added 70 something out on the street by the railroad tracks that are rarely used. I watch them every time I'm down there to see how often the use of those is there, and that's a block and a half away. So I'm talking about on the other side by the First Bank office there, the new spaces that were put in there. Even the busiest downtown, those are underutilized. So I just thought in terms of this very, very valuable space, the value of 12 spaces was far outweighed by the protection that this option gives. And yes, this is nice. I agree this is nice. This was, to be honest, I sort of came up with this and thought this was good. And then the more research I did on turf stone, the more research I did on the cost. And Brandon brought up a point that I did come across, which is that ultimately sometimes the maintenance of these, I went out and visited Longleaf and did take pictures of their use out there of their grasscrete. Now this is in the middle of a driving range, and the ball retriever does sort of have a hard effect on the grass in the turf stone, but this is a fire lane that's out there, and ultimately many of us discussed it, and it just kind of seemed a little unkempt, and therefore was not quite what we were looking for. So I've already said more than I told myself I would when I started talking.
That was
Thank you.
helpful, thanks. That was helpful.
What was your favorite, Mike?
That was informative, thank you.
honest truth,
Yeah, we want that.
I don't have a favorite. I really don't.
Oh.
I really don't have a favorite. I will tell you, I'll speak for the staff side of things. Staff was a little bit worried about what was going to be, what we were going to pull off of to do. We have a price for us to do some of the work, but it was going to be extremely challenging for us to get it done in a timely manner and keep other things going. So I understand the need for the parking spaces. I also understand the need for keeping vehicles away from children and adults sometimes. We had really, really in-depth discussions. The one thing I'll mention,
Anna's writing furiously.
and Anna's not listening, the one, we had a
is off
very,
the record.
very short, off the record, short discussion about the farmer's market and the right place for the farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't think that was an option.
No, I
to
would
move
say
it.
that's not
So,
an option.
but we have another farmer's market on Thursday that's very well attended.
I just think it's important to keep this one
I've wondered
downtown.
about whether or not the
So we
farmers.
can never truly keep, BJ's right, you can never truly keep vehicles out of the park if we don't make a commitment to that.
So-
And we didn't see, staff didn't think that we would make a commitment to that either, which is okay.
So as for me, I agree 100% with Bill on option one. If it's the consensus that option one is not the path forward, my second one is option three, because I feel like that option two and option four having an asphalt strip there, we might as well just grass it all. That's the way I feel about it. I would rather have no asphalt and no turf stone
Right,
or
right.
have option one.
Yeah, I could get on board with option 3.
So I encourage you, you've got some time. We're not looking for a decision today. Do like the mayor said, we spent, every time we met and discussed it, we went to the park. And we stood in the park
that's a
and
great
looked
idea.
at it and talked about it. One day we went over, there was cold. There was no cars in the parking lot at all. The next day we went over, there was warm and the parking lot was full. So
I think if we chose to ultimately do option 3, though, we would put, we would extend those trees out into this area, which would, kill the grass, but it would create shade.
Which would be nice in July.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
it's okay, go ahead.
I think to throw another, okay, Anna, here you go, girl. Just to throw another thought into it, as far as the placement of the farmer's market, I've often wondered about whether or not the farmer's market should be at the pool park where there is a food scarcity issue and an inability for some people to have the vehicles to get to the farmer's market and take advantage of it. So
So like
just
moving Thursdays or Saturdays?
Saturdays. And downtown merchants have complained in the past to me about the fact that Saturday is a slow start day for them because there's a parking issue because of the farmer's market. So,
It's
I
a
don't know
slow
what the
start
right
day
answer
because of
is.
Friday night.
right, well, that's you. Come on, quit right now.
So
This.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to think
let me
about.
say something about moving the farmer's market. There is a farmer's market already that's a block and a half from the pool. park.
Correct, on Thursday.
Yeah. Oh, because the timing is not,
Correct.
I got you.
When people are working during the work week. And it's, it's great to be retired and go there. But I think if you're doing a Saturday farmer's market,
The Thursday one's all year long, though.
it is.
Right.
Right.
You said it's a block and a half.
At the
away?
Armory, the one at the Armory is what he's
About a
talking
block
about.
and a half from the pool park, maybe 2 blocks.
Isn't it, yeah, it's a lot further than that.
Is it?
Yeah. Armory is,
It's a long block, I'll grant you
Morganton.
that. I think you're both right. It's farther. It's a long
But-
block. It's not a New York block.
but when you say the pool park, that's in West
Your
Southern
checker-
Pines area.
Fact
That's,
checker over there.
and we don't,
Right, but the
Yeah,
Armory's right off of West Southern Pines. He's right. It's a block and a half, yeah.
So
But it's a long block. It's a really long block. I got you.
we'll, let's all go visit the downtown park, farmer's market, Friday night, movie, whatever's going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
and
I mean,
just keep an eye
I
on
love
it.
being able to ride my bike down to the farmer's market too, but I also wonder, the food scarcity issue is one that I'm very cognizant of and I know that purchases can be made at the farmer's market using food stamps. And I know that that makes food readily available and the food comes to the community, whatever community it's in. So I'm throwing that out, not that it's, not that it's a flawless plan, but I think sometimes there's a third option that maybe makes sense. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And you and I are both just gonna, Anna's got us now. We're gonna get all kinds of funnels. Anyway.
You need anything else from us?
thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief Cameron. Okay, our budget update. Manager Parsons.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that conversation that went about like I expected it to. So we'll revisit it. Just as a quick update, because Engineer Mickle was watching in at the time, he's not here because he's trying to wrap up a grant application for the reservoir dam situation. But your question regarding the paving, right now running about $200,000 to $250,000 per mile. Now that's outside of milling or curb, other things that may need to take place, but just pure straight paving, $200,000 to $250,000. As far as your budget update, it's pretty straightforward. The only change that has occurred since the last public hearing was the skate park change that you actually voted on during the consent agenda here. So your bottom line right now is an available fund balance over and above the 25% of $655,000. To tie back in an earlier conversation, if you were to end up at $150,000 on the Pinehurst Southern Pines Greenway Trail project, you're still just over $500,000 in available fund balance above the expenditures. And again, that's if you chose to transfer it straight from available fund balance and not your general capital reserve or some other potential options when the time comes. So That's really my update relative to the budget and a question of if there's anything that Tess and her staff and myself need to go back and change again before we have our hopefully final public hearing on that here in a couple of weeks and request an adoption that evening. We will be updating all of your pages as a result of the skate park change, so you'll have a final book upon adoption that you can reference back to. Again, we're able to do that, and we held off doing it before this meeting just in case there was one final change or something that came up, so.
I think the only follow-up question is maybe to Tess, is there anything that we need to do to make your life any easier? I know this is one of the toughest times all year for you. Are you good? Okay,
You're allowed to say not change anything.
right, and which is fine. If that's what you need to say it. That's great. So, and I think we have made that change, so we should be fine going forward
Yeah,
to June.
the 655 that was on the screen there is representative and includes what you adopted earlier this meeting.
Right, and for the project we were just speaking about, the current
That money is already in the
amount is
budget.
set aside, we're not messing with that later.
Right.
Okay.
This is not changing the budget at all, but have we seen sales tax numbers for March? April? What month would it be?
For February that came this month,
Yeah.
I sent those out. It might have been middle to late last week when I realized that we hadn't pulled those
Okay, I just didn't see.
during the second week when we typically do, so.
Thank you. All right, do you guys have any questions or suggestions on the budget?
I thought your production was a little streamlined. I appreciated that last meeting.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you.
the hearing itself?
Yeah, thank you. I think that comes from, you guys did a lot of foundational work. Both of you did. You did, Tess, you did, and things were run by the council. So I think that was part of the reason that it is so efficient and effective, so.
And to that point, my intent on the 10th is to streamline it even further, similar to how I have done in past years, just talk about what has changed, which will be the skate park funding, and kind of just open it back up for commentary. But my intent is not to go back through that entire presentation again.
No, it's great, and I think that everybody's on board, so thank you.
For the public, our last budget hearing will be at our next meeting, June 10th. When you'll do one more presentation on the changes, and people have an opportunity to speak if they would like to.
Yes.
All right, very good. All right, seeing no other comments, we can move on to planning department update.
And I will turn it over to BJ for this. I will offer, because I know one of the things he's teed up for you is discussion of the fee schedule. If you were to decide to move forward with something on that, it is not going to change the budget document at this point. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them being that part of the whole fee schedule and trying to project revenues comes back to just how many applications of each type actually get received. But secondly, any changes that you're going to make at this stage, we kind of have to, because of changes in general statute and such, we have to be upfront for a period of time that they're going to be made. So you would not be adopting those with a fee schedule in June like you will with many of your budgetary documents. So it will not affect the budget itself relative to your discussion this afternoon and any direction you give us relative to new fee schedules for planning and building. So it's all yours, BJ.
Thank you. I'm going to whip through a quick review of what's coming before you in June and July, followed up by a quick update on the comp plan, and then get into the bringing back the fee schedule discussion. The June 10th Town Council meeting will have a watershed protection permit for Mavis Tire in the Mill Creek development. It'll have an architectural compliance permit for a new Hyundai development, Hyundai dealership at the corner of Murray Hill Road and US 1 here, where the Southern Pines Select is. This property here is being looked at to by right use, but right now they're working their way through architecture. You will also have the annexation, the public hearing for the annexation that you set the public hearing last time, as well as potentially a consideration of the offer of dedication for Carlisle from the developers out there. There's some work to be done yet. That'll either come to you in June or possibly get bumped to July, depending upon how their progress on some of their punch list is going. For the July 22nd Town Council, we will have a major subdivision as well as a PDP for a project, and you will be looking at the sign code updates that are coming out of the June Planning Board. The sign code updates, you'll recall, are part of Phase 2 of Comprehensive Plan implementation. We have completed the Senate Bill 166 updates. We have applied for the multimodal grant, and that has been submitted and taken care of, so we're going to wait and hear on that. In process right now is updates to the sign code as well as the housing project you're familiar with. The sign code project that is going to Planning Board in June is an update to our sign code based on constitutionality. We have stopped short of making changes that are policy-based, for example, giving people more signs or less signs or bigger signs or smaller signs or more well-lit signs, or what we are focused on is making sure that our sign code is consistent with U.S. Supreme Court case law that distinguishes what is constitutional when regulating signs. And in a nutshell, anything content-based is typically treading too much into free speech. And so the regulation of time, manner, and place is what we want to amend our sign code to get back towards. When it comes to you, you will see there's some noteworthy changes in there. We have some exemptions, for example, that are exclusively content-based. We have to get rid of those. But that will be going to Planning Board in June, and then will come to you in July. We are also needing to still work on parking as well as accessory commercial units. The second half of this year, our comprehensive plan implementation will likely slow down a little bit because our senior planner is moving on to better, bigger and better things. So we will be short-staffed while we look to refill that position. Elena is really excited about doing something different, and so we're really thankful for all of her contributions to the team, thankful to her contributions for the entire community, all of her work on implementing the comprehensive plan. I can't say it enough, but I could talk quite a bit about that, but we will miss her for sure. We'll miss her contributions to the team. That brings us to the discussion of fees. You will remember about 3 months ago, I brought in a full analysis. Then the month after that, I kind of brought up a few more details. At this point, what we have is I wrote a memo with some options, mostly just to prompt and catalyze some discussion. And there were a lot of ways to approach it. There's more options than I did write here, but some main options include, you'll recall that I showed you a spreadsheet of the administrative costs of reviewing development applications. Just a real quick refresher, North Carolina General Statute says we may certainly charge administrative fees. You can charge up to covering the cost of the work that you do, but you can't really charge in excess of, you cannot charge in excess of that, but you can charge less than that. Charging less than that is essentially a policy decision that general revenue will partially subsidize the cost of reviewing different types of development approvals. So option one, for example, you'll see in the memo that I did put in an example fee schedule. The first thing of interest with the fee schedule is to modify it so there aren't quite so many fees listed separately with outdated terminology and things like that. That's pretty an easy thing to fix. But some of the fees are combining. After we did the analysis, we saw that different types of permits, for example, are very similar in the amount of work we put into them. So why not combine them into one and then just label it as zoning permit level 1, zoning permit level 2, and then there's footnotes to describe what are included in those. You can see that option 1 is to increase the fees to cover 100% of actual administrative costs. So that is an option. Another option is to increase fees. You take the current fee, which the current fee, I don't know what it's based on, if at some point in the past there was an analysis done or not. I just know what the current fee is. So option 2 would be to take what we know to be the actual administrative costs and the current fee, and then just take the midpoint between the two. So you are increasing the fees, but you're not going all the way up to the administrative cost, you're just getting towards it. Option 3 was, you will recall in a previous memo, we laid out what the CPI had been since these were last updated. This does not include 2025, but through 2019 through 2024, that 5-year CPI is a cumulative 23%. And so increasing the current fee simply 23%. Without regard to what the actual administrative costs are, sort of setting that analysis aside and just going by CPI. So these are 3 options, and of course there's other ways to approach it as well. I do have the number of different types of permits we've received in the last 12 months, so if you're curious about that number, but in the interest of brevity and opening up for discussion, I'll just end there because the memo and the different options in the memo. And then attachment B that I had in the memo, I looked at this version and I just, all these, ending to the nearest dollar, I just thought nobody adopts a fee for $568 or $1,053. So I just prepared a version that was rounded. And this isn't for adoption tonight, as Reagan said. Either way, we can take whatever you say. We can prepare a formal version. We can run it through the hearing that's required for any subdivision fees. But like I said, I just didn't want you to think that I was proposing fees that had strange numbers like that.
Oh, thank you. Other questions?
What is a comprehensive plan amendment?
Yeah, comprehensive plan amendment. Sometimes when you have to amend the comprehensive plan because the development you want to do isn't even remotely consistent with the comprehensive plan, it's not called for, it does get discussed. Sometimes, under North Carolina law, it is possible to amend the zoning and deem it an automatic amendment to the comprehensive plan. But if your project is so different than the comprehensive plan that it warrants going through the process first do a public process to amend the plan to see if it's appropriate, that's a comprehensive plan amendment. Say you have a land use designation that is, I'm just going to, you have something that is a land use designation that this is an area to remain as is, not to transform, not a designated activity center, and you want to come in and take an area like that and make it a designated activity center. My recommendation to a developer doing that would say, you should do a comprehensive plan amendment to assess and give some indication of why the circumstances have changed so dramatically so as to radically alter the comprehensive plan.
Does that ever happen?
I haven't done one since I've been here, no, but they are not uncommon in many jurisdictions. And I could see, we've had one come in recently where I said, if this is going to move forward, you really should look at a comprehensive plan amendment to first have a public discussion about the appropriateness of it before moving forward with just a zoning amendment.
So the plan doesn't have to, a use, like the example you gave, doesn't mean you would just, in a scenario where you made the case before this body of why this use would be right, then our motion would be it doesn't comply with the comprehensive plan, but then we can vote in favor of it. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's an option.
Yeah.
It appears, BJ, that, thank you for doing this, by the way.
Yeah.
We're clearly undercharging for what our staff is doing. So my question is, it seems like we need to increase it to some degree. What's the general consensus for other towns or municipalities? Do they subsidize a bit these, or are they just like, hey, we're option 1 and this is what we normally do? Is there a consensus for what other towns do?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I did some analysis of other jurisdictions. Based on what I know to be what the minimum every jurisdiction has to do for certain types of development approvals. Every jurisdiction in the state has to do a certain minimum number of things to amend their zoning. It's prescribed in state statute. Given what I know about that process and what it costs behind the scenes to take care of that, I'm going to go ahead and say that I believe most jurisdictions, very, very few jurisdictions, and in fact none that I came across when looking at other jurisdictions, recover 100% of the actual cost. It's very normal to subsidize it to some extent. You'll recall in my memo I also mentioned there's another option here, option 4, which I didn't want to get into because it would have taken a page to discuss it, which is you can sit and go permit or development approval by permit or development approval and say, for example, what's this worth to the community to have this as a thing, to have, throw out certificates of appropriateness, floodplain permits, special use permits, all those things. What's it worth to the public, and to what degree may we want to subsidize it? Watershed protection permits right now, for example, we don't charge anything for a watershed protection permit because the Water Supply Watershed Act, adherence to and compliance with the Water Supply Watershed Act is something that at some point in the past may have been made a policy decision that we will the public will cover the costs of reviewing and approving those and granting exemption allocation. I can make an argument that it is also a development approval and you want something, you want exemption allocation, so therefore you're getting something out of that. So therein lies the discussion. How much is the answer? Yeah.
BJ, of all of these different particular items, which one do you see the most, or which ones, maybe I should say, do you see the most that you have, as a planning staff, you have to be about doing? Because I'm kind of agree with Bill. I'm looking at some of these current fees comparatively with the actual cost. I'm like, wow, it's a great difference. So I mean, if you don't recoup the whole cost most times, are there some particular areas that maybe it would be beneficial for you to at least recoup the actual cost? Because you just do so much of it and it's...
I understand the question, and I guess I would need to say, first of all, as a professional, I hate to say it this way because maybe it sounds bad, but I don't professionally, it doesn't affect how we do our review, or it doesn't affect us professionally how much of a fee we charge. I think there's a desire, or there's an understandable perspective that we want more fees, or we want more money, or that we're going to make more if we charge more fee or something like that. And in fact, as you all know, our salaries are set, and it is what it is. So the decision about whether or not certain applications get subsidized more by general revenue as opposed to recovering that through an administrative fee is really a policy decision. I can't answer the question of, for example, exempt subdivisions. We do a brisk business in reviewing exempt subdivisions to verify they are in fact exempt. We charge $25, and that doesn't even come close to what it costs for us to go back and forth on exempt subdivisions. So every time we look at one and charge $25, $25 is almost a fee that is annoying to charge them, if that makes sense, because sometimes they don't have money with them, and we got to invoice them, and so I look at that one and I say, look, if we're trying to recover something that is clearly a service being provided to those who are filing an exemption, that's a low-hanging fruit, or something that should be increased to recover more of that, or the public is continuing to subsidize that. That's about as well as I can answer that, because everything else depends year to year. There are certain things what I'm primarily focused on with my analysis and trying to deliver to the town council and make available to the public is to provide the service of reviewing this that we are required to under state statute, to the quality that our public here in Southern Pines expects. And I hasten to add that because, as we say in the office, this isn't janky Pines. We have a high standard for what we do, for what we hold ourselves to, and that takes a little more time. We do follow up on inspections. We do double check things. We do require details be taken care of, and that takes time. So
I think, and I don't know how the rest of you guys feel. I think that my approach with this would be a little bit more a la carte, instead of like picking an option 1 or an option 2 or an option 3.
Doing is I'm going through and
Yeah.
circling of the things. I mean, because
Like zoning permits is a citizen coming in to put up a fence,
level 1,
yeah,
level 2, either
$200.
one.
That
Yeah.
seems a lot to get a permit for a fence. So I would prefer to take each one. And also, bear in mind for all of us, I don't know the exact number, but if we look at actual cost, option 1, approximately 50% of that cost is review, not by staff, but by planning board and us.
Yeah, we're expensive. The other
Staff
thing,
is half of that option 1 cost,
Yeah.
and planning board and council is the other half.
the other thing I wanted to mention is I feel like we're trying to encourage people to do conditional zoning, and so that's one that I don't want to see that go. I actually would rather see it go down,
That's true.
to encourage people
Yeah.
to go through that process rather than, like, that way we have some design control, which seems to be what people want when they talk about preserving character.
That's true. That's a good point.
Do you all want to go through this? BJ, would you like us to go through it, just line item by line item right now? Or do you want, I know I said, we talked about this 2 months ago, and I know I said that we were going to do it at some point.
I did too.
Another option would be if you would like me to go through it based on that desire that I've heard from 2 members of council so far, to look at it based on, I mean, we could look at it based on comprehensive plan implementation. We can look at it based on, now again, it is a policy decision, but I want to try to help you do some of the legwork to get at your intent so you don't maybe have to sit here and go through each one and discuss each one. That seems like a lot. If you would like to trust me to go through and look at things based on that, I can give that a shot and then you can tweak that. In other words, maybe tweaking something I come up with is better, or is
Yeah, I
easier
think that
for you
sounds
than starting from scratch and doing it.
Yeah, and then,
Give you a justification for each one and a little cell next to it, say, hey, look, this is prioritized on the comprehensive plan, therefore, maybe charging half or something,
We do with options.
yeah, no. Don't give us 4 options. No, I think
Or
that
we can
sounds
go
a good
through it one by
plan.
one, that's fine too.
No, I think that sounds like you have an idea of what we're trying to accomplish, and I think that you could do that better than we can.
I think we all kind of spoke a little bit to that
Yeah.
desire.
The only thing that I wanted to ask is, especially what Brandon said, if it's going to be a citizen going in, doing something in their yard, I feel like that's not the kind of person that we're, whatever. Anyway, making it reasonable for our citizens is fair.
Is there a zoning permit level 0.5?
0.5. I don't know what variance and administrative appeal really are. Is that just someone requesting a variance?
Yeah.
Yeah, so very briefly, variances are circumstances where the classic example is you have a lot that is 40 feet wide and it's developable. However, zoning comes along and puts 20-foot side setbacks on it.
Okay.
You are basically rendering a property undevelopable as a result of the imposition of a regulation. In doing that, the pressure valve for that is a variance.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people will say, well, I want to make my house bigger and go into the setbacks, therefore I want a variance. And some jurisdictions give them out very easily. We do not. We say the mere desire to do something is not really grounds for variance. So about once a year, we get somebody that comes in and due to the highway corridor overlay, plus a right-of-way acquisition that chopped the property in half, plus this, that, and the other thing, we're usually the first to say, wow, you got yourself a variance here. We encourage you to apply, and we'll support that. And then with an appeal, that's if the zoning administrator makes a determination that you feel is incorrect. And frequently, when I write those determinations, I say at the bottom, if you disagree with this, it is your prerogative to appeal this to the Board of Adjustment. And when they do that, there's a process for that. And so an appeal there's an administrative fee for that.
So if somebody, if there's a decision that they disagree with and they appeal it and they win the appeal, meaning that the original decision was unjust.
Yeah.
They still have to pay the $500.
That is an administrative fee at this time. And in fact, the average cost of processing an administrative appeal under option 1 is actually $1,150. So I can understand from a different point of view, right? If you pay that fee, you win your appeal, that's challenging. I can't argue with that. But you also, that is what we pay to process it because we have to do legal notices, we have to host the hearing, with the Board of Adjustment, et cetera, et cetera. So there's costs involved.
I'm okay with, I think, with the direction you're going, though, on a policy perspective, if you win your appeal, this doesn't happen a lot, though, that you're refunded.
Yeah, it feels like if I've been wronged, it's a shame that it cost me something, but that's
Right.
okay. We'll talk about that later.
Right.
I think, we're on the right track with you putting together a schedule. Let's just move forward from there. Does that work?
Yeah. Please understand that when I put something together, I may miss the mark on a number of them, but at least you can hone in on the ones that I've really missed the mark on and other ones. And again, I'll write in the cell just sort of what the thinking is behind each one and give it the best shot I can.
June work session? No, yes, okay, awesome.
Guidance on whether we are all leaning toward option 1, 2, or 3 in regard to how we want, if we want it raised, what we're looking to do, or do you think that's going to vary depending on which item you're dealing with, I guess, would make sense?
Yeah, it's not going to be easy, I can tell you, because every one of these development approvals does have some public benefit and
Right.
determining how much of public benefit. But just as much as I might sit there and struggle at my computer to think sort of all the different perspectives I've heard over all the different years, I think that would be very challenging for the town council to go through that as well. So, things that are primarily for the benefit of, private development, I'm assuming would have a generally higher desire for cost recovery than individual homeowners slash landowners who have to get a permit. So for example, for a fence.
But it still needs to be fair.
Well, and if you, please advise me on this. If,
Right.
when I hear fair, in some instances, I think, well, the cost the public is spending to do that is fair to recoup.
Well,
For some things, and-
so for the example case that I gave is some of this actual costs are reviews that we as a community have decided that we want. So the question of fair is, if we want that review, is it fair to make someone else pay for 100% of that cost? And that's what I'm talking about.
Understood that perspective. I understand that perspective completely. You're making me think maybe I shouldn't take the next month and try to go through these one at a time because I may come up with something really wrong. I understand.
No, I think you're on the right track.
Okay. I understand completely the multiple perspectives on this. There is the perspective that all of this is for the public good, going through these processes and holding hearings and
That's fine.
the time we spend researching it. So in that case, you would charge no administrative fees.
No, we.
In mind, we keep throwing around the example of a fence permit, and you talk about what's fair, but BJ can probably come up with 100 stories of the fence permit that was anything but an easy application, and it might have been because of a dispute with the neighbor, or, I mean, there are circumstances under which even what seems like the most straightforward, and it's just the property owner that has an interest, that turns out not to be the case.
Yeah, and you may recall in terms of option one, the actual cost, I really spent a lot of time trying to make sure it's just right in terms of a conservative average. I say conservative average because it was like, if I had to shorthand for conservative average, I can think of slightly more than half of the instances where it probably took more time than this, and slightly less than half of the instances where it took less than this. So that's a conservative average. It also doesn't reflect the current budget year increases in staffing costs. So
I think you're on the right track. I think you know what we're looking for, and I think you give it a shot. And
I'm hearing you.
We'll go over it.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm hearing you. Thank you for your feedback.
Absolutely.
Turn your microphone on, but you just did. You had something.
I was going to. I was just say probably more to option 2 or 3. Good option 1, just no going back, I think. And so if we walk all the way there, we don't need to do it at once. So one of the hybrid versions would be best.
Okay. I knew there was something in your brain. I wanted to bring it up.
Anything else, BJ? All good?
That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, last thing, council roundtable. Brandon, would you like to get us started? Unless, Reagan, do you want me to jump back to you? Do you have anything else to add before we move on? Okay.
So Manager Parson and I met out in Northwest Illinois and Northwest Broad Street in Illinois a few weeks ago, whatever, down by Hatchet. And we discussed the intersection there and the number of occurrences where folks are running through the yield sign like it doesn't exist, right? Coming from West Illinois, like where this gray van is, if you're coming that way. It's not exactly where the road looks now, but that yield sign now is here. And there's a number of daily occurrences of people that run through this yield sign like it doesn't exist. It creates, so the folks that have the right of way are the ones coming over the tracks, just like everywhere else in downtown. And I have a nice video of someone that I didn't see them until they were exactly in front of me, and I don't know that they saw me either. And I've heard others in the area. There's some businesses in the area.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, that's what it looks like now. So where this truck is coming from, was you're coming across this tracks. And especially there's in this last parking place, there's a van that likes to park there. You can't see, this gray truck can't see me coming across the tracks. I can't see them either. And so as they look, they don't see anybody, so they just blow the yield sign. And I don't see them, but I also have the right of way. And so we're trying to come up with a solution here. And I know one of the things is tied into getting a sidewalk across this track. which may take a long time. So what I would propose, if there's more folks that support this, is that we come up with some fix sooner than later, whether we put in we go ahead and put in the sidewalk area or concrete planter area where that hatched mark is, the yellow hatch mark, and move that yield sign and that do not enter sign on the other side of the road further out into the road where the people driving up Southwest Broad, it's in front of your face instead of so far off the left. BJ, can you come back up Southwest Broad Street? Oh, you can't see it,
You
never
know what's
mind.
funny is whenever
It's
time I
not
go to,
there.
it takes me back to 2016 whenever I do
Until you
this.
get in the middle there.
Yeah, and it's like, it's the Google must have come across here.
Yeah. So the yield sign on coming back the other way is on the left-hand corner there. There's one on the right and there's one on the left. Now there's parking here and you can't see it. So, I don't know if you've had any more time to look into it.
Well, what I've asked Engineer Mickle to do is make contact with his contact at CSX, because I think I had explained to you, the concern was that if we went out and started constructing the bulb out in
Yeah.
what would appear to be DOT right-of-way, not CSX, because CSX actually has some authority within, I think it's 100 feet of the tracks. The concern is that they would come out to do an inspection as part of the planning that they're doing to allow for the sidewalk, see that we'd already begun construction, and kind of torpedo our application to be able to get across the tracks with the sidewalk. So what we're going to try and do is go to them in advance and say, look, we've got this issue. Part of it is being able to get the signage out here where it's more visible. We'd like to go ahead and construct the concrete bulb out. We'll come back and deal with sidewalk once you all do your thing and actually provide us that easement. So we're trying to get permission, which ultimately will have to come from DOT based on the right-of-way, but we need to kind of get CSX's sign-off on beginning a project that pretty obviously is intended to result in a sidewalk eventually, but it won't be a sidewalk initially.
Okay, so how long is that going to take?
I don't know if James has been able to get in touch with them yet or not, but, okay. And we're still waiting on an answer, is my guess. Okay. So it is in process.
So either we come up with a permanent solution or we come up with a temporary solution, but what I would propose is that we, over the next 30 days, we come up with a plan of what to do. If it includes DOT, and if or it had to include DOT, but if it includes the rail, the CSX, for some permanent solution, fine. If it's not a permanent solution, it's a temporary solution, that we develop that plan over the next 30 days, and then we fix it 30 days after that, at least temporarily. And then, and I have a picture of a real temporary solution. I've seen it actually on another place where they moved a stop sign temporarily out into the middle of the road because they were doing work, but the result was actually inexpensive and effective.
Well, and that's part of the Plan B that we have discussed, if DOT will allow us to do it, is to return back the barricade, the temporary barricade that was there when we first went one
Right.
direction, and just move the sign kind of attached to it as far as the yield to left,
Right.
et cetera.
So-
Don't really want to go that direction, but it is at least,
So I'll give you real quick, and then I'll move on my roundtable. What I'm saying is taking HDPE, the storm drain pipe, the plastic one, high density polyethylene, and they cut it about 30 inches tall, and they moved the yield sign and the do not enter sign into that, filled it full of concrete, so it's a barrier, and it's just pushed out into the road. So it's real temporary, real movable with a piece of equipment, but not as in your face as those orange barricades.
right.
So I have a picture, I'll send it to you guys, but I think that I would like to see us do something, and obviously it's got to be consensus with you guys, but I think it's a problem.
One of the things you did bring up that we did not discuss when we were out there in the intersection, but is it your belief that that first parking spot, as I'm looking at the screen, should probably come out for
Yeah.
sight distance purposes?
Maybe. It's really you can't pick who parks there, right?
No, that's right.
So
So it's the
really-
type of vehicle that is parking there
Yes,
that,
yes. And so I really feel like, I'm not an engineer, but I feel like moving the yield sign out more in your front of your face on the driver's side of the car, instead of on the right, it's on the driver's side of the car, and being more in
Yeah.
front of your face would be a good first step. And I would rather take whatever the least expensive option is to see if that solves it. And then that also helps solve whatever we ultimately do with the concrete
Right.
and the sidewalk.
Right.
Really briefly, we previously had a barricade there.
The orange one, yeah.
There for 6 months. We moved it because we couldn't stay there forever. DOT was good with that. We feel fairly certain they wouldn't question that if we moved it back. The other option is to do away with that first parking space. We can, obviously, that's in our
Okay.
temporarily or permanently. It's something we can discuss.
Yeah, okay.
There's a couple of options. There may not be as much as you want because we've got all these other entities.
I'm okay with a half step. I just would like to see something to keep someone from, the traffic travels slowly. That's a good thing, but it's bound to happen at some point though.
Quick comment. You need the town engineer involved in this because the manual of uniform traffic control devices sets some standards about where signs go. Right. And we need to follow that because if we don't, then there's a we're in the soup with whoever's going to.
Okay, all right, perfect.
Just as a side note, everything we've discussed staff-wise, James is in that conversation.
Okay, great.
Yeah, let's get James in it, but I feel like whether we are legally liable or not, we know it's an issue, and so it needs to be addressed.
I kind of wonder what legal liability you have when you know it's an issue and you also don't try to do anything to make it better.
Let's not
Forget
ask.
DOT intersection, which is why they are part of the conversation
Yeah.
also. And they are going to require that anything that goes out there go with that same MUTCD approach.
Perfect. So that's my comment on that. The next question I've got is, do we have a schedule for maintenance like on Morganton Road of the new landscaping that they put in? Is there like a twice a year deal we do out there?
It is on a maintenance schedule. I will say relative to the new landscaping on Morganton Road, I think we fell behind, well, we may or may not have fallen behind on that. And what I am getting at is originally that was an installation done by the DOT and the town took care of it. Typically with DOT installations, they take care of it for the first year. I'm not so sure that they did that installation on Morganton Road with that same thing in mind, and we may have had some belief that that was going to be the case. I think there may have not been as much conversation at the time that went in as there might typically have been, so.
So it was done before the open, right?
It was done like last year,
Yeah,
yeah,
before the US Open last year.
yeah.
So it's been a year, I guess.
It
It's
has
been at least
now,
a year,
yes,
yeah.
but it probably needed to be touched before that.
So what I see, I mean, obviously there's always going to be trash that blows into it, but I see a lot of volunteer plants that are starting to come back in there that really need to be cut out and cleaned up. So that road looks nice now. I wish that it was a part of the Carolina Green Parkway and then, or we could stretch the Carolina Green Parkway onto Morgan Road, but it would be nice. It's also a gateway. It's a gateway into the town. It's a great gateway coming into West Southern Pines. It would be nice if we touch that maybe a little bit more often. I talked to Assistant Manager Ross about the reconciling recycling costs and revenue for this 5 months, I guess we've already have. And then my next one is, and final one, is who determines what limbs we cut off of trees? And I'll get to my point, my specific tree in a minute.
One more question?
Is the arborist, who determines how we cut the limbs off of trees? There's a tree on the downtown park that is affectionately known as the climbing tree by kids that play in the downtown park. And the limbs have been removed off the bottom of it. So just out of curiosity, who makes the determination?
Those trees would definitely be looked at by the arborist.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would be like the thought process? Was it healthier for the tree, or is it to keep kids from climbing the tree?
It wouldn't be simply to keep kids from climbing a tree. It would be a health, safety, if the limbs were not, I mean, if we're talking the magnolia trees there, and I think we wrote, no.
It's like the cedar tree, or I don't know what kind, maybe it's a cypress tree, I don't know, but. Yeah.
So it's one of these right in here.
Yeah, it's not the magnolia though, it's beside the magnolia.
Okay.
As soon as you said it, I was like, oh, Lucy knows that tree well.
Right, right.
What are you talking about?
It's no longer, or it's not as easy a climbing tree as it once was. And
Okay.
We now need a ladder for the climbing tree, basically.
Yeah, I think you can still get on it. You just can't get higher. You can't get to the next level. You can't level up in it anymore.
And it's important.
I mean, I think it's important. I would love kids to see kids climbing trees versus,
Get off the screen time.
Yeah.
Go climb a tree. Right, gotcha.
My guess, and I don't know anything specific about how that tree was handled, but my guess was that limbs were probably damaged and hazardous. All of that park, all of the parks fall under the purview of Graham, who is our town arborist. And so
can you just find out?
everything would have been done under his oversight, whether it was his team or whether we contracted. So they wouldn't have just randomly removed some branches there without a good reason, but I can certainly ask.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. That's all I have.
I have nothing.
All right.
You did.
Let's see who else's time you took. Pro Tem, do you have anything?
I have two things quickly. One, as council members, we get phone calls from a variety of citizens for a variety of reasons, many of which are so particular they don't come into the public meeting forum. There was one such thing I got involved with recently, and want to give a kudos to Mike Cameron. He went above and beyond the call and dealing with a particular specific issue got called on recently, and I appreciate that. Like, all of our citizens should appreciate to know the detail that staff gives, and it's nothing that's ever going to be in the public meeting. So I felt like you deserved a kudos, shout out for that one. Thank you. My next question, which I didn't have pre-planned, but your question asked it, because I have been asked about this. So the apartments on Morganton, as well as Carolina Green, there's dead trees from their plantings. Can you remind the public that, yes, those will be replaced, but remind us how and what the process is for that?
Yes, those will be replaced. If it is a landscaping buffer required, then prior to us approving their final plans, they will need to replace that. When you have dead trees that were required as part of landscaping, even after you grant the CO and the project is there, it's still a zoning violation for those trees to be unmaintained. So if they're cut down, if they die, that is a zoning violation. So, for example, the project on Morganton, they are aware. In fact, they're very aware, and they're aware they want Carlisle to be adopted, and they're aware of, and they have it on their list. They ran into some challenges with keeping the irrigation flowing through there, because it's a lot of irrigation for a lot of planting. And yes, that is absolutely a requirement that all that gets replaced. And our team is all over that, and that's one of the things that takes up time. Because it does take time to pay attention to those, to follow up, to email, to bug, to pester, to annoy, and to make it known that, no, we're not just going to forget. It's been 6 months. We've reminded you once per month, and we'll keep going. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that. Anything else? All right, Ms. Gray.
We had one of our residents at our last business meeting mention something relevant to right of way and difficulty seeing because of, a lot of green just growing up. And I think it was like the next day or something, I heard, I was in the bed sleep. I heard mowing and everything going on. And it's interesting because I have a light in my house that if you kept it on in my kitchen, it would go off after about 40 minutes or so. But since they did all of that cutting, apparently something must have been leaning on a wire. So now my light stays on like all day. So thanks to the town staff, because I know that they're busy, but I'm so grateful that they were able to get to that old spot in West Southern Pines and cut down some of that green that had just grown over. We have some bad spots of visibility as well, a particular corner, but there's a house that's there that needs to be torn down. So there's some other issues, but just kudos to the town staff. Thanks. Oh,
It's in the right of way.
Okay, I will quickly say, last Thursday, I was able to present the, what, resolution of appreciation to to Public Works. I was gonna say resolution, it sounded wrong. Proclamation, there you go, the proclamation to Public Works, during their, and they call it the Olympics? Okay, thank you, Jessica and Mike, for being there and helping organize that. It looked like it was a lot of fun. Congratulations to all the winners. Which department was it?
It was garage and public works admin.
Garage and Public Works Admin were the overall winners. Yeah, it was a fun event, so I appreciate being able to participate in it. And I passed along Bill's, or all of your all's, just appreciation for the work they do on an ongoing basis. And also a quick thank you from all of us to Elena. I believe this Thursday is her last day. Okay. If you all want to stop by and say hi to her. She was here when we were doing some of the work through West Southern Pines. She and Rachel Mann were working on the DFI study and getting information. And then she was here when we implemented our new comprehensive long-range plan, or when we adopted it and trying to get it implemented through the challenges we've had there. I just want to say thank you from all of us to Elena, and good luck in the next step of her career. And I think that is it. Our next meeting is June 10th. I will see you all then if there is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.